LinkedIn is the world's largest professional network on the internet. You can use LinkedIn to find the right job or internship, connect and strengthen professional relationships, and learn the skills you need to succeed in your career. LinkedIn is a platform for anyone who's looking to advance their career, is what you find after a quick Google search on what is LinkedIn. It's a social networking site for professionals, but I think it's got kind of a bad rep, especially among younger people. On a tier list of social media platforms ranked by how cringe they are, LinkedIn would definitely be at the S tier. And I never really liked LinkedIn that much either, to be honest. When I first got to college, I was very much staunchly anti-LinkedIn. I think part of it was because the prospect of needing to get an actual job and just becoming a cog in the corporate machine in just a few years' time was a little intimidating for me. I mean, if I was going to be spending any time on social media anyway, I would much rather be spent looking at funny cat dances on TikTok than reading about the top 10 interview tips for people looking to go into big tech. In my mind, LinkedIn was almost as cringe as something like Reddit or Discord. I think another part of it was that seeing people interact with each other on LinkedIn felt kind of surreal, and it didn't really feel like they were actual real people. It was kind of more like seeing my classmates interact on Canvas discussion posts when we're contractually obligated to respond to at least 2 different classmates' posts. And while I'm sure it wasn't the case 100% of the time, a lot of the comments I'd see under people's LinkedIn posts felt a little bit disingenuous, kind of like they were commenting just to keep up appearances and maybe give them a boost in their own career advancing journey or whatever. I think all social media platforms will inherently be authentic to a degree because people will naturally want to put their best side forward while hiding their weak side and shortcomings, but I think that LinkedIn is especially egregious in that regard. Maybe because LinkedIn is specifically focused on people's careers and livelihoods, maybe because the professional veil over LinkedIn is something I never really liked. Of all the social media platforms I've ever used, LinkedIn might just be the least authentic and the most performative, and maybe that's something that other people feel too. And perhaps the thing that I disliked about LinkedIn the most is how you always end up comparing yourself to other people. Hearing about other people getting their 6th internship while you're still struggling to get just your first never feels good, even if you feel happy for that person. It's really quite a dilemma. Like, I'm glad that other people I know are doing well in their careers, but it's also like, man, I wish that was me. For example, I went to Stanford, so a lot of the connections I have on LinkedIn are with other Stanford people. And of course, everyone at Stanford is super brilliant and doing really super amazing things. You know, everyone talks about duck syndrome or imposter syndrome and how even though everyone around you might look like they're just cruising just fine, everyone has their own struggles underneath. But seeing how cool all of your other classmates are and seeing all of the amazing things they're up to on LinkedIn definitely makes you feel some type of way. So I think it was a combination of that and probably other factors that made me not really like LinkedIn that much. I made an account in the beginning of my freshman year of college, but I never really used it and I definitely never made any posts on it. The idea of just making a post on LinkedIn was always something really intimidating to me for some reason. But unfortunately, as I got older and made my way through college, I realized that it would probably be really beneficial for me to make more connections with people on LinkedIn, especially if I wanted to take advantage of being a Stanford student and make progress on developing my career. And as much as I hated the idea, I would have to get a job eventually. And so I begrudgingly started to become more active on LinkedIn. I didn't really know what I was doing, but anytime I saw a Stanford person, I'd connect with them. Eventually, I made my way to the elusive 500 plus connections. For those who aren't avid LinkedIn users, connections are kind of like your mutual followers on LinkedIn. There are also followers on LinkedIn, which are kind of like one-way connections. And on your profile, it'll say how many connections you have, at least up to 500. And then once you're over 500 connections, all it'll say is 500 plus connections. So if you see someone with 500 plus connections on their profile, it's like, how many do they actually have? 510? 700? 1,000? Who knows? It's kind of like an exclusive badge that shows how cool you are on LinkedIn. Reaching 500 plus connections on LinkedIn was such a euphoric moment that I'm pretty sure everyone with 500 plus connections can definitely relate to. Honestly, it was a bigger milestone for me than hitting 5,000 subscribers on this channel. Truly a big yippee moment. And I'd say the other big turning point in my LinkedIn journey was this post about someone announcing that they had reached Town Hall 12 in Clash of Clans. I think that was the moment that I realized it's really not that deep. At the end of the day, LinkedIn is just another social media platform, and I don't need to think so hard about it. And so I started making my own posts. I started treating my LinkedIn as kind of like a spam account on Instagram, but just ever so slightly more professional. And honestly, I found it kind of fun. I thought it was funny to make posts about getting a new pair of glasses, for example, or having my breakfast, but I thought it was also a nice way to make posts about different milestones in my life. I just had my graduation ceremony at Stanford in June, and it was cool to be able to make a post about it. Maybe partially just fueling my own ego, but it was kind of nice to have people congratulate me on LinkedIn. Maybe because of that, I'm now like those other people posting about getting their 6th internships, but really I'm just trying to focus less on comparing myself to other people's success and spend more time just working on building myself up as much as I can. I think it's a much more productive use of my time to do everything I can to the best of my ability, imposter syndrome and duck syndrome aside. But above all, I think LinkedIn is really powerful in terms of helping people advance their careers. That's like one of their key features. Building up my profile page and creating my sort of online resume helped me get a better sense of everything I'd accomplished so far and really helped me look for other job opportunities. Nowadays, one of my favorite pastimes is looking through the different job postings that they have on LinkedIn. It's like one of the first things I do when I wake up. If I see something that looks interesting, I apply. I must have applied to dozens or maybe even hundreds of jobs by this point. I think it's pretty fun, to be honest. And surprisingly, I've been able to move on to the interview stages for a bunch of positions, meaning that I'm decent enough to make it through the resume screening stage at least. And not to toot my own horn, but I've also gotten quite a few offers, some of which I ended up accepting. I'm sure that a big part of the reason why I was even able to make it that far in the hiring process for a lot of these places in the first place is because of the weight of the Stanford name. Actually, the Stanford name probably is the thing that gives me the biggest boost on my resume. While there are definitely several job opportunities that I can tell decided to move forward in their process with me after just seeing what school I went to, I'd like to think that my actual qualifications themselves did a good bit of the work. But I do think that going through the whole job hunting process has been really helpful in teaching me what areas of my resume I need to work on or what strategies are helpful for being successful in interviews. I've learned a lot about how to get jobs that I probably wouldn't have if I wasn't so active on LinkedIn. I think it's also really good to just be able to keep your eyes open for any new opportunities that might be appealing to you. Man, now that I'm looking back on it, I really can't believe this all happened. I told myself that I was never going to be a LinkedIn loser, but here I am. I have to admit that it's really useful for learning about different opportunities, whether it be for internships, jobs, scholarships, or whatever else. In terms of my professional development, LinkedIn has definitely been really helpful. I think that in this day and age, a lot of employers are going to be asking to see your LinkedIn. So in that regard, it's pretty important to keep it up to date and make sure that your LinkedIn looks all good. So in short, I've started my journey to become a linked influencer. So if you want to join my journey, send me a connection request on LinkedIn. Wouldn't it be so fun if we connected? I mean, if you want. Thinking about my future on LinkedIn, I definitely want to take a more casual approach to it. Definitely not as professional as the typical linked influencer. I know there are a few creators on LinkedIn that definitely lean more on the informal, casual side, and I think that's probably the direction I want to go in. I think the overly professional style of a lot of posts on LinkedIn is a little suffocating, so I'm here to bring the change that I think LinkedIn so desperately needs. I know LinkedIn can still be pretty intimidating for a lot of people, and again, not to toot my own horn, but I think I've learned a thing or two about how to be a pro LinkedIn user. With how the current job market is today, I think it's so important to be able to put your best foot forward and do everything you can to really market yourself. And I think that does mean learning how to use LinkedIn properly and making posts on LinkedIn to kind of track your development career-wise. And I know it sounds kind of lame, but LinkedIn is a lot more fun than I initially gave it credit for, and I think it's just a matter of not taking it so seriously and having a more whimsical approach to the platform. Just like have fun with it. And so if you'd like to hear more tips on how to optimize your profile or otherwise use LinkedIn, leave a comment down below and I'd totally be down to make more videos about it in the future.